shadows asleep amidst the trees. Bats all are swaying in the breeze. But one so light anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags and wraiths. For your dolly Polly sleep has flown, don't dare let her tremble alone. For the witcher, heartless cold, paid in coin of gold. He comes, he'll go, leave naught behind but heartache and woe. Deep, deep woe. It's all silent for the night. Hours turned in as daylight dies. But when so light anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags and wraiths, my dear Dolly.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Haunted Connections show. So I hope you're all well. We're bringing this to you from the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, Leicester, and of course we're sponsored by Sims Vintage Antiques in Walton Warren near Stratford. So a big welcome to everybody. So tonight our topic is all about the Fae and fairies, and we have our lovely guest. She's been a guest before and it's always a pleasure to have her back. It's our lovely Kate Ray. So a big welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's lovely. And well, of course, we've got Neil as well. And it's always lovely to see you.
Hello, everybody. I wondered where you're going to bring me in then. No, thanks again, Kate. It's always, I think this is the third time, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's always good. It's always very interesting. and I do admit, the first time we had you on, I was a little bit skeptical, but you two are persuading me around, you bringing me around to believe in it. So, which is good, and hopefully you're doing that to lots of other people as well.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope I'm opening people's eyes to different aspects of fairies, and it not being a bubbling unicorn thing. I do quite often get messages from people who have heard me on things like this and sort of ask me different questions. So it is filtering out there. It's really lovely. It's I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Okay, we've got a couple of comments already. Look, we'll put this one on first.
Oh,
Toma is watching from Sweden.
Hi,
so
hi from Britain to Sweden.
And Adrian is watching from his hospital bed. I don't know what's wrong with Adrian. I'll have to message you again.
Okay, then. Get well soon.
Nigel says, I absolutely hate the Fae. Devious little devils. Pardon my French.
I couldn't agree more. There is definitely that side of things.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? People associate fairy with the little creatures with wings, all nicey, but that's not the actual crux of the matter, is it?
It's not the whole of it. It is some of it, and some of it, there are theories about we project our own thoughts onto what these creatures are. So some people do actually see sort of winged creatures, but historically we've learned to appease them by making them into beautiful creatures, and we've done that because it keeps them at bay when we talk about them in a lovely light. But if we look at past history of folklore, there's not very many nice fairy tales out there, to be quite honest. They're all quite horrid, quite dark, usually very moralistic, but much more than that as well. So yeah.
Okay, a couple of more questions. Adrian's in hospital because he's got 7 kidney stones.
Ouch!
Now,
Ouch!
Oh, I hope you get well soon.
I know AD suffers with kidney stones, but I was hoping they'd sorted that, AD.
Yeah, I totally feel for you. I've had kidney stones before, and it's a pain beyond belief. And you don't really realise when people have it, when they say, "Oh, I've got kidney stones," and then you have them yourself, and it can be crippling. They are quite bad. So I do feel for you.
Yeah, let's put Bloss's comment up. Bloss says, before we get serious, what have you got to say about the cricket with your friends in your youth now? I've got nothing to say about the cricket. Obviously, if you don't follow cricket, you've got no idea what happened. Well, England got walloped
Oh,
in the early hours of the morning in India. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh,
let's talk about
let's
Faye.
move on. just going back to that point, when you were just saying about them not being so nice. I've just recently been reading a book called the Demonologist's Handbook. Oh no, sorry, nice. The Exorcist's Handbook, and there is actually a section in there where they have actually dealt with creatures from the Fae world that have actually seriously affected people. So I thought that was really quite interesting, because they're not all nice and how we expect them to be.
No, and it's good that books like that are actually acknowledging that there are creatures sort of beyond the demonic realm that can actually interact in a demonic way and have those kind of features to the behaviour as well. So that's good to hear, actually. Because can you imagine if you said to somebody, "I'm possessed by a fairy," what kind of reaction you'd get?
Honestly, that's the reaction for a start.
Well, that's just showing the reaction, hasn't it?
That's a whole new level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you think sometimes, when people go on about demonic possessions, and they've got a demon in the house and that sort of thing, and do you think it sometimes could be fairies? And
I think there's a very slim line, and fairies can definitely display a lot of the demonic behaviour. They can, if you just think about the basics of moving objects, sort of tormenting people in various different ways, whispers, banging of doors, etc. All the things that kind of build up to those what we know as demonic hauntings. Yeah, definitely, Fae can do all that. It depends on what level the kind of pissed offness is, or the malevolence is, depending on how they kind of escalate that kind of behaviour. So yeah, they're not. I mean, don't get me wrong, I talk about the dark side of Fae because that's what fascinates me, but there is definitely a lighter side of Fae, and there is that kind of sort of more twinkly side, but that's something that I touch upon, but it doesn't fascinate me half as much as this other end of the spectrum, really.
Yeah,
sounds like a lady I know.
Yeah,
I think we are a real. Sorry, carry on, Kate.
I was going to say, I think we're kindred spirits with this one, aren't we?
Yeah, it's what I'm finding quite fascinating is the amount of fear that even the fairy folk can instill on people. And I'll just read you this because I thought it was really quite. This is from the 1600s. There was a highly volatile trial in the 1600s that involved the supernatural. During this trial, the judge, jury, prosecutors, and all the legal experts present in the courtroom were invited to test some evidence to see for themselves the truth of the particular matter. The man on trial had a whole raft of accusations levelled against him, centering mostly on fairies and witchcraft. The man was reputed to be a great healer, and he maintained that the fairies had trained him. He said that he possessed a highly potent magical power that he regularly obtained and from the fairy knoll deep in the woods. His defence lawyer demanded that the people in the court accompanied him to visit this magical glade and to see for themselves the truth of the matter. It seems that the experts unanimously decided against accepting the invitation, preferred to acquit the man on all charges instead. Did the fairies keep the crowds away, or were the people too frightened to visit them? So there you've got this whole trial around this one man. And when they're invited to go down to the woods to sort of look at this area, they all just decline. They're all just sort of terrified, and they just let him off.
It sounds like the classic trap of all fairy stories, though, doesn't it? You know, come with me, you know, let's go to this magical place. And they're probably at the wit's end thinking they're going to disappear into some fairyland somewhere. You know, that's brilliant. That's genius.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put some more comments up. Nigel said, it's good to hear others reaffirming my opinions on the Fae. Wendy says, I've heard imps are not good.
Yeah, so imps have become a bit of a buzzword lately, and it's I think I've spoke to you before about them, and I have done some digging, and it seems to be more of a general term for behaviour. We've got the Lincolnshire imp, of course, which is the famous imp, which is more on the side of the lesser demonic, but imp to me is more impish behaviour. I haven't really come across a body of work that will give me substantial evidence that imps exist of their own ilk. I would put them in the category of maybe hobgoblins or goblins, or you know, that kind of thing. Maybe they're a cousin to it, I don't know. But in terms of the word imp, I think when people refer to imp, that they're referring to behaviour and sort of stature and nature of a creature rather than a creature in its own right. I could be completely wrong. Yeah, they tend to be things that have impish behaviour, tend to range from just generally bugging you and sort of getting on your wick to pinching, punching, you know, that kind of thing. So they can range in behaviours.
That's interesting. Yeah, when you're little, my mum used to say you little imp when you're naughty.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It was behaviour.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that I'm constantly sort of digging to get to the brass tacks of what's going off, specifically with that word as well, because we've heard it bantered around in the sort of paranormal TV world as well, where things are being referred to as imps. And I think it's a really good word as a coverall for behaviour. And it kind of explains a creature to a lot of people, doesn't it? When we say imp, we have kind of most people have a clearish image of what that might look like, you know. Yeah.
I must admit, we've got different creatures at the centre.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of people have asked us, are the imps? Mm-hmm. Because they know that word, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's more comments. AJ said it's not all twinkle.
No, it's definitely not all twinkle.
Ada says, my mum always told me when I was a little boy, don't go down the bottom of the garden as the fairies will get me.
Yeah, I think that's a general thing from our childhood, isn't it? That if our parents wanted us to keep away from a certain area, you know, maybe your mum was planting some prize marigolds down there and didn't want you trampling over them. So it's a great way to keep kids at bay, isn't it? But I think it's being lost, I think, with kids being exposed on the Disney side of things. There's a whole raft of a generation that have lost that fear and respect. So I don't think it's a terminology that parents use anymore. I haven't heard it used in modern terms, you know, stay away because the fairies will get you.
Okay, it's a word I've never heard of. Nelly says, evening, would you class the Pukwudgie as a part of the Fae realm? I've never heard of that word before in my life.
It is in the back of my mind. I think the Pukwudgie is American. If I'm right, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, definitely, I'm not particularly to grips with my American folklore and fairyology as yet. It's something that I'm moving into more with an interest in the crossover between cryptozoology and the Fae realm. But I think in the recesses of my mind, yes, it is Fae realm, but it can be classed as crypto as well. So it depending on how people experience it.
Okay. Duncan says, are imps also known as goblins, or are goblins different?
It is a good question. It leads on from what I was just saying, and I think a lot of it. I mean, lots of these things are ambiguous in the fact that they get lost in the mist of time. But I think the word imp it can be quite colloquial. So in Lincoln, they understand the word imp quite readily because it's something that's part of their history. And in other parts of the country where we call goblins, we in other certain parts, the hobgoblins, or they could be house brownies. So these terms are transferable when people aren't connected in talking about these things. They form their own words and their own names onto different creatures.
Okay, Jane, you got a question?
Yes, I was just so I'm just finding the page where I sort of come up with where I sort of found this, and it says the word fairy derives from the Latin fatum, meaning fate, and the theory that the fairies are the ones who bestow individual destiny to us.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the theories where the word and the terminology comes from. I use the word fae to mean the whole realm, and I spell fairy the F-A-E-R-Y. Sorry, I had to see it in my head then. Just to distinguish it from the sort of Tinkerbell side of things, and it kind of pricks people's interest a bit more of why I choose to spell it that way, and not the kind of the right way, if you like, of fairies.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting theories though, isn't it? And just some of the theories that, you know, that we've sort of left our fate to the fairies, and it's them that bestow, you know, what happens to us. It's just an interesting theory, I think. And you know, we go through life, don't we? And we just sort of most of the time disregard all this stuff. But it would be really interesting if they are involved in what happens, you know, in our lives.
Oh, definitely. And I think in the natural world, they are symbiotic. They are inseparable from that. So in terms of our fate as human beings, as animals of the planet, then yeah, definitely. You'll have to excuse, my dog's now snoring her head off right beside me. So if you hear demonic noises, it isn't. It's my dog.
I did wonder what it was. I thought it might have been Jane's dog because he comes on the table and all sorts.
She's actually snoring. Yeah, she's under the table. She's under my desk snoring.
Here's a comment from Blas. Blas says even Tinkerbell had a nasty side.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of her, would you?
Okay.
Look what she did to I can't remember her name now.
Don't know.
Wendy.
I can't say I've ever watched it.
You know Peter Pan, don't you?
I've never watched it. I couldn't tell you what happened. So anyway, Nigel says, would say that they're from the same realm but different races, fae, goblins, imps, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're from the same vibrational frequencies as each other, and I would say that they're possibly very aware of each other. And it's a plane. I explain it in terms of very much like the animal realm, where an ant might not be aware of a giraffe, but they live on that same plane. So there are interactions between them, but I think there's also times when they don't know of each other. So it's not like they're all connected as in they're all sort of cousins, or you know, I think the family tree and genealogy of fae is as disparate and as wide as our animal kingdom, you know, so you get all kinds of different creatures within that realm, and possibly some that we see and we just lump into one genre because we don't know how to explain it any other way. So we may see something that is completely different, but it kind of looks like a pixie, so we'll kind of put it into that realm.
Yeah. Well, he's snoring well now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Colette says imp is a substance that people used to put up the chimney to unblock it back in the 60s instead of getting a chimney sweep. See how educational this show is? I didn't know that.
No, a chimney imp.
Annette says my mother was terrified of goblins. She always said she saw them climbing up her bed and she was genuinely terrified.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've come across many tales of people being visited by these kind of things.
Yeah. Wendy says, when do you think Fae came in? Lots of fairy stories, so must have come on in early on.
I think as we recorded human history, we also recorded the history of the Fae with that. Oh, my dog's really grumbling at me now. I do apologise if I'm slightly distracted. So, I mean, there are cave paintings which they attribute to maybe the Fae or aliens. So we've looked into that concept. There are references, really ancient references. I think wherever you look, where human has written history, you will find, even if it's just tenuous links, you'll find links to the Fae. I think when we started picking up recognition was when I've spoke about it before with the Industrial Revolution. We had a lot more leisure time on our hands, so people were exploring literature that probably the classes of people didn't do that before, and accessing artwork as well. So it became, you know, it instilled more within our human consciousness, and it was through books and art as opposed to oral traditions of telling stories, which got lost in the midst of time, really.
Okay,
Yeah.
next comment.
I did find a reference just in one of the books I've recently been reading about, even in biblical times there is a reference to spiritual creatures, and I think they all belong in that same umbrella. You know, I think you've got your elementals, I think you've got your Fae, I think you've got our spiritual creatures that we have up at the centre, and I think they all come in under the same sort of realm and in the same under the same umbrella.
Yeah, definitely. I just saw a comment from Mark there. Sorry, I was distracted with that.
Yeah.
Hello, Mark.
Mark says, the wonderful Kate, hair girl Ray. Kate, my paranormal sister.
Yeah.
You obviously know Mark.
I do. I work with Mark in the Ghost Finder Paranormal Society. So yeah, he's a buddy of mine who we've had many a discussion about fairies. I'll let him tell you what he thinks about them.
Okay, tell us later, Mark. So do you find it difficult to actually talk to people about Fae?
I definitely used to, not so much now. I think when I was younger, I found it cripplingly embarrassing to talk about it, because I think I was partly scared of being seen as a loony, and B, lumped in with that kind of glittery side of things, because that's not where I'm at with it. I think the older I get, the more I don't really care. You know, it's the thing is, it's paranormal. It's all joined up thinking to me, and I think the quicker as a community that we get into joined up thinking and joined up research, the quicker we're going to start finding answers to the things that we're asking questions about. You know, different realms. You know, we talk about the spirit realm in terms of those who have passed over, and there are multiple more realms, and I think if we start discussing them in conjunction to how they interact, you know, because actually in the great scheme of things, we're the weird ones because we're material, we're solid. You know, it's like there are things that exist that haven't got the same material bodies that we have. So actually we're the odd ones out, really.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Do you think it's becoming more and more popular, and more people are being able to talk about this kind of thing? Because I think it's coming more into the TV shows about the creatures and about the Fae and all this sort of thing. So do you think they are slowly getting more acknowledgement?
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
The right word?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are understanding that, you know, that there are complexities even with demonology and its connection and its intertwining with things like Catholicism, and that's not the whole story. And I think people are looking constantly outside to, well, we haven't got the answers, so we're not asking the right questions, so we've got to start thinking outside the box to what we're dealing with and what we're moving forward with. And ultimately, when, you know, paranormal researchers, paranormal investigators are in it ultimately to answer questions and to also help people who are experiencing negativity. And it's not until we can get to grips with what's going on that we can seriously start helping people and seriously start answering some of the questions that we have.
Question, Jane?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of add to that and just say, I think people as well also see a lot more than they let on. I think there's a lot more sightings that go on. I think there's a lot more children see things. And I think people are just sort of blinkered and they shut their eyes to it. You know, they see something and it's like, oh, my mum must be playing tricks on me, or, you know, whatever, I must be dehydrated, or all these sort of things. And I think a lot of people just sort of have that blinkered view that they just dismiss what they see. And it would be amazing if we could get a record. I know it'd never happen, but it'd be amazing if we could just get a record of all the sightings in different areas that people have had.
Yeah, so there is Dr. Simon Young brought out a few years ago, where I think you mentioned it as well, Jane, the fairy census. He's also got another one online, the second volume, that you can, and I can't remember what the actual link is, but if you look up the Fairy Investigation Society or Fairy Census, I think it's 2021 now. I think it was starting this year. It's a place where you can go and anonymously give your account of fairy encounters, or what you believe are fairy encounters. It's then put into a volume which is accessible on the internet. You can download the PDF for free. It's accessible as a research document, really, and he's very passionate about it. So it is being documented for the first time in a very long time that he's trying to do this mass census, and I'm hoping people will step forward, because it's so interesting, because a lot of them do relate to encounters, historic encounters, and fairy and folk tale, but there are definitely nuances in a modern sense to how people are experiencing these things, it's a super interesting document.
Yeah, I've had 2 encounters since Christmas.
Have you?
Which I think are really I think it'd be somewhere I'd like to go and record what I saw and what I experienced. And the first one really was because I have to sort of do a walk every day, and I try and walk through some of the woods and stuff like that. And I was walking through, and the energy was absolutely electric, and I could see the little I would say little people. I could see the little ones just sort of jumping around, and the excitement and the energy in the woods was absolutely electric. And I was sort of saying, what's going on? And they were saying, we've got a big celebration. And it was almost like I mean, this was sort of in January, so I don't know if there was some sort of Fey New Year or something like that, but the excitement was absolutely electric. And the second one was somebody sent me a picture of their garden, and there was sort of like a bit of a I wouldn't say mist, but there was a bit of an area where they were having problems. If they walked into this sort of area, there was a lot of grief and sadness, and the feelings and the energy that they were getting were really uncomfortable. And when I then went to Spirit to ask them what was happening, and it sort of came back that they'd had this bit of an extension built and ripped out all the trees and hedges that were there. And this was such a little community in this garden. And because they pulled it all out, they sort of revolted, if you like. They wanted retribution. They wanted some payback for this sort of experience. And yeah, so they're sort of the 2. Or the other one is there was another one on in Mulk when they were celebrating 1st Feb. And there was also some excitement around that as well, because they were saying that they're also celebrating the same festival. So that was sort of three encounters for me since Christmas. So will they have their own festivals? Do they celebrate these?
The thought that came to mind when you were saying about the first one in January was that's the kind of faith that would celebrate the dropping of the last acorn. You know, they would get super excited about something really simple that went off in a woodland, you know, and because they have that kind of heightened, excited energy that they would have, you know, they saw a squirrel do a backflip and they'll like have a party. It sounds like that kind of energy. But yeah, they definitely, the pagan celebrations that we have, they also celebrate them because they're within the natural cycles of you know, of nature. So they get excited when spring's coming up, and they respect when winter's coming in. They understand how things ebb and flow. So where we celebrate those things, they celebrate those things too.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's fascinating. So it's weird that you had 3 experiences in a couple of months, though, Jane.
Well, I think because now I'm sort of, if you like, I've sort of got access. I can see them quite easily now. You know, this is something that's been earned, I believe, over the last couple of years. And the more now when I'm out, I can really sense the changes in the energies. And once I link into that energy, I can see them, and I can see what they're doing. And this excitement for this celebration was just, I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay there and sort of, you know, watch them celebrate, but I couldn't. I had to sort of get home because, you know.
You wanted to boogie on down with them.
I did. I wanted to stay there and see what was going on.
Well, we know that's a dangerous thing. We know that's a dangerous thing. Never stay and dance with a fae.
Yeah, let's get me white lightning and go and sit in the woods.
That's brilliant. Right, let's put some more comments up. Martin says, that's the problem with this. If you tell people they look at you gone out, sometimes best not to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've gone past caring.
We've gone past caring. John says, do you think the interest in the fae and spiritualism with the Industrial Revolution and later comes from the move of the masses from the land into the cities?
Yeah, definitely. I think that when I mean, we've seen it now, you know, when people are in a state of shock or removed from nature, or there is a state of mass depression, that people do turn to the mystical, the magical, the spiritual, and fae definitely kind of traverse the gap between a yearning for something magical and spiritual and nature. So they kind of tick all the 3 boxes. And especially when people were taken away from the land, not only did they take away their ideas of the fae, but there was also that resurgence in a kind of mass consciousness, because it filtered out with other people who hadn't come across those theories. But when people are excited about those notions, you know, if you're living in a smoggy city and you're working, you know, long days and it's just the general trudge of everyday life, and it's grey, people yearn that kind of the bright lights of kind of mysticism and spirituality. You know, it's I spoke to you guys about it before, you know, the yearning for it, especially in the first lockdown that we went into, where I was definitely seeing a rise of people leaving fairy trinkets in woods, and you know, lots of little treasure hunts around villages going off that were completely spontaneous, because people wanted some magic in their lives. And like I say, yeah, fae really do tick that tick box, really.
Yeah. Do you think years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, before we got all this the way we're heading, there were more sightings and more interest in the fae, but then it sort of went down. But now the spiritualism seems to be on the rise again.
I think when it was an integrated part of people's lives, that they understood the fae, even if it was in terms of smaller hearth deities, that, you know, that they would blame as well as revere these things, you know. So if the crops didn't do very well, they looked to the reasons why, and it could often be fae, or it could often be smaller deities that happened with. So it wasn't, it's just like us sitting down and having a cup of tea in the morning and our own rituals, you know. The fae came into their ritual lives. I don't think they've ever gone away. I think our ability to be able to talk about them has ebbed and flowed, but they've always been there. I think it's really interesting, when I've been looking at fairy places around Britain, there are particular spots that seem completely devoid of any kind of connection. And those are the places usually where they've had very, very fast industrial revolutions, where the pace has taken away the oral traditions of storytelling. So places haven't established as fairy places, fairy place names, or places of fairy sightings, and especially those places that have are devoid now of ancient sort of burial sites and monoliths and megaliths, etc. So places that are devoid of those seem also to be devoid of fairy tales and fairy encounters. It's strange. It is a strange thing.
It is strange. Jane, anything?
You see, I think going back further than that, before we started to live in houses, before we started to have jobs and cars and everything else, when we were sort of going back to more living off the land, living in more living in harmony with nature, I think they would have been much more helpful. And I think that's where a lot of the fairy tales and the folklores all come from, because we were living off the land, we were using the land, and like in the areas of industrial revolution, all people were doing was just living in slums and going to work, just trying to live, just trying to survive. Whereas that life outside, more in nature, even going back to when we were hunter-gatherers, we were just living off the land in a peaceful way. We didn't worry about money and cars and stuff like that. And we had that spiritual nature there. We had that spirituality where we connected with spirit and the land and everything around us. And I think we've lost so much of that.
I definitely agree, and I think with the concept of depression and anxiety, so you worry about the future, that's anxiety. Depression is re-going over the past, that we don't center ourselves and live in the now. And when you're living in the now, as you know, sort of walking around the woodlands, and you take that time to just inhale and exhale, and you're looking around, that's when you kind of go, wow, you start seeing things even in the natural world that you've probably walked past a million times before walking your dog. It's allowing ourselves to have those breathe in, breathe out moments to reconnect all round.
Yeah. Do you believe? Do you both believe that fairy tales all have a truth in them? No.
Somewhere. Yeah. Somebody's obviously seen something, or they've experienced something, and whether, even if it was before the time when things were written down, those tales and stories would have been handed down verbally through, it was generally through the female line, because they were the mothers, the nurturers, and they would be the storytellers as well.
Now, have you seen the film Spiderwick Chronicles?
Yeah.
That must be one of your favourite all-time films.
Mine?
Yeah.
I do enjoy it, and I enjoy the books as well. I read the books. I work with children, and when they came out, I read the series to them, and I did enjoy them, and I enjoyed the, I suppose, more truthful side to fairies, which was nice. It was nice to step out of that sort of Tinkerbell type arena into something that was more real. But I do enjoy the movie. I must admit, though, Labyrinth, for me, I'm a big Labyrinth and Pan's Labyrinth, they're two of my favourite sort of fairy-esque ones.
Yeah, I gotta agree with the Labyrinth, because it's got David Bowie in.
Oh yeah.
Can't be anything with David Bowie with the David Bowie in. Okay, Nigel says, I've given up caring, to be honest. I'll happily tell people all our experiences on investigations, and then get them interested enough to ask questions and stop ridiculing.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's one for the cause.
Yeah, that's how we are at the centre, isn't it, Jane? We just
we're on a mission, we're on a path, and like we've always said, we will do things.
We're on a mission.
We're on a mission.
I'm sure you said mission.
No, we're on a mission.
Oh, sorry.
And we will do things, and we will experiment with things, and we will see things and everything else. And to us, that's our that's our bit of evidence or whatever. We're happy to share it with other people. Now, if other people don't believe it, or they laugh at it or whatever, then that's down to them. But you can't hold yourself back because you're worried about other people laughing or ridiculing what you're doing.
Definitely. And I think if you speak truthfully about these things, and you know, you speak from a place of research and passion about what you're talking about, then I think it's very hard for people to ridicule you, although they could, but you know, it builds your resilience up. You know, I've got to a stage where I know what I know. I know my own truths, and sod everybody else. You know, there are people out there think I'm a lunatic, but actually to the people I've spoken to when I've done things like this, it's just the first thing that a lot of people say is, thank God I've got somebody to talk to, you know. And it's let's start talking.
That's great. That's great.
Well, I have actually been trying to help you know, the world in general as such, because on these lines, you know, the Green Man and or Pan, however people want to look at him, you know, he is also he's drawn by innocence and enthusiasm, and he can help weary souls become children of nature once again. He's very sort of that fun loving, and I have actually been sending the thoughts out to him to try and get people out into nature, to get them enjoying their gardens, getting them out in nature while this pandemic's on. So I have been sending him lots and lots of thoughts to try and help as many people as he can.
Oh, I'd be careful with that one. Pan's one of my favourites. I've got him tattooed on my leg. He's also a bit sex, drugs and rock and roll, so be careful about where you send him. It could create a bit.
I think we can all do with some sex, drugs and rock and roll.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, Pan's where the word panic comes from. Pan, so the word panic comes from him, and it's that heightened excitement. You know, when you see a herd of deer bolt, and one just lifts up its head, and then poof, and that kind of panic that ensues, that's attributed to Pan. So he's also got that kind of energy. I love Pan. I love that kind of quality about you know, the nature and the dancing and letting go and just giving yourself a time of disconnecting from the material and just enjoying nature. Definitely. Send
Is she frozen?
Oh, she's back. Just broke up then. Say that again.
Bless you. Am I back? Which bit did you miss? I was lamenting it. I was saying send Pan my way if you're going to send him out.
You can have him when I'm finished with him.
Good.
I'm not saying a word in this conversation. All I'll say is I was born in the 60s, so I know all about sex, drugs and rock and roll. Not personally, of course.
No, oh no.
I was a 60s baby as well.
Okay, Bloss says, if you believe good enough, blow the rest.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't matter what anybody thinks, does it really? Let's face it. You obviously got too much time on your hands, Jane. You're reading too many books, far too many books.
Well, I've got one more point here as well.
Oh, go on then.
In one of these, in one of my books, it does, for anybody that's it wants to try and contact any of the Fae, whether you sort of recommend it or not. It does say one of the best ways to try and contact them is through dowsing. So dowsing rods. So would you recommend anybody to do that? Is that a good way to try and make first contact with them if people can't see them or they want to try and experience more of the Fae?
I think with the dowsing rods, if you're picking up any energy from any of the different planes, I'm sorry, my dog's snoring again. I mean, they are there for picking up energy. So if you do ask for the Fae to come within that energy scope and you want some proof that they're there, then definitely is a form of communication. I can't see any problems with that. I'm not big on dowsing. I have done it before, but it's not something that's ever really floated my boat but I totally believe it, and I've seen it work fantastically well. But it's just one of those things. I like pendulum work. I'm a pendulum worker as opposed to the rod, so I do understand how that kind of works and interacts.
But people could still use that method, couldn't they? Pendulum rather than dowsing rods if they've got a pendulum.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually know where this is going, Jane.
Do you?
I can guess.
Yeah,
you're
you've
gonna.
got some dowsing rods, haven't you, Neil?
I've got dowsing rods. I know what you're planning to go in the woods sometime.
Oh, we should do an experiment. We should all go out and do different experiments.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
live.
you're always welcome. You're always welcome to come up the centre and come and join us for some of these things. But I will say, in all the books that I have got, in every single one where it says where if you want to connect with them, you must use protection and everything else, because these are one of the strongest forces you can deal with. So I will just put that out there. If you are a bit wary, then before you do any of your pendulums or dowsing or whatever, just have a check and do some protection if you feel safer doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've with anything like this, you've got to state where your boundaries are, say what you want from it, and don't go into it just for the. I think people, excuse me, with a lot of things go into these things with that slight ego edge, where they're doing it because they want to find out whether it's real or not. And actually, you know, you've got to ask yourself, are you being respectful in how you're moving forward with something? If it's just evidence that you want, then, you know, I would say have that conversation out loud and say, you know, I am looking for evidence because I'm curious, and I want other people to believe in you. It is like anything, it's intention, isn't it? It's how we approach things with intention, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put the next comment up from Bloss. Bloss says there's nothing like walking through woods at dawn or twilight.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more.
Yeah, it's nice walking through woods anytime though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is magical.
I think that when you get that shift in light, though, and it's the betwixt and between times when Fae are particularly active, or I don't know whether they're more active or whether it's because it's that in between time that we become more aware of them because the light changes. But I know that I've spooked myself rotten in woods before at that kind of twilighty time, and been in woods that I've known like the back of my hand and got lost at that time as well, and ended up and thinking I don't know where I am. Which is you know, it's called pixie led. It's seen as something where the pixies send you around in circles, but you know, parapsychology would say, you know, the change in light and you know, and walking in a place where you're not taking too much conscious levels in because you think you know it and you could end up anywhere. I like to think I've been pixie led.
Yeah, I think that sounds better.
Yeah,
definitely. Okay, we've got a question. Then it says, do you think Fae are nature or interdimensional?
I think they're both. I definitely think they're both. I mean, I've got sort of a growing interest in the theories of crypto being Fae, in the terms that they're interdimensional. I mean, one of the theories that's sort of bubbling about and have been bubbling about for a while has been that Bigfoot is in the Fae realm. And that's why we lose track of them. I'm sorry, I've got to try and distract my dog from whining at me.
He's happy. He wants to take part in the show.
I know.
Okay then. Oh, here's a comment from Mark. Mark says she does jump.
Oh yeah, he's seen me. He's seen me. Only the thing is, when I'm out on investigation, and Mark will vouch for this, I'm the kind of person where something will be going off and everybody will be panicking, and I'll be cool as a cucumber because my brain's going tick, 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 and trying to sort out, you know, the possibilities. And then when my brain goes, there are no other possibilities than this being paranormal, everybody else is quieting down, and then I start swearing, you know, because I'm like, oh my God, that's paranormal.
That's brilliant. Bloss says, if you have a dog with you, they will guide you out.
Oh yeah, from being pixie led, yeah, definitely. There is that. There's something about dogs. I think cats are quite connected with the Fae, but dogs being more loyal to humans will definitely do that. They are good for things like taking you back home. So
that's interesting. Anything, Jane? We've got 10 minutes.
Just thinking about the dogs and the cats then. Yeah, I would probably agree with that, because I think the cats are pretty much more laid back, aren't they? And they're sort of, yeah, I've seen that before, seen it, done it, you know, bought the teeth where the fair concerned. Whereas the dogs would be more like, what's that? What's that? Oh, let's go, let's go. What's that? What's that? And they don't seem to have that same sort of. I think that's the same with dogs and cats anyway. But I think the dogs do tend to sort of sit back a bit more and be, you know, and then look at it and then be all excited because they don't really know what it is. Whereas the cats seem to know what it is, and they sit back and just, it don't faze them really.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Bloss says, mine has many times. That's her dog. Fascinating. So if someone wants to go out to find these pixies in the woods with the dowsing rods, you two definitely recommend them having some sort of protection and going with the right intent as the main things.
Yeah, because, you know, like Kate said before, you think that, you know, we're so led to believe that fairies are these little cute things with little lovely wigs and little wings, little lovely wings and little sort of acorn hats and things. And it's just, it can be so far from the truth, and they can be one of the strongest forces in the paranormal.
Yeah, definitely.
And if people aren't used
to it, yeah, people aren't used to it, and, you know, and a bit complacent, they could bite off more than they chew, you know.
Yeah. Fascinating. So, Kate, we've got 9 minutes left. So tell everybody how they can find out what you do and what you've done.
Okay. So I think at the moment, if you want to hear me sort of chat into other people, I've got a YouTube channel that I have been pitching under the wrong name for as long as it's been on there. So I've been pitching under Hair in the Hawthorn, but actually you have to look up my name. So if you look up Kate Hairgirl Ray or just Kate Ray on YouTube, I've had some absolutely fantastic guests from all different variety of people on there. It's been amazing, really. So I've had people who are writers about fairies. I've had fine artists on there. I've had people from spiritual backgrounds, witches. I've had people who are paranormal investigators talking about it. Had a guest last night who came, who's a spiritual teacher, and is not on the side of the paranormal particularly. So I kind of try and gather people up and not just talk to fairy people, because I want to start digging around the subject and searching into the subject from different perspectives. You can find me. I'm not so active on Facebook anymore. I've just sort of, I fell out with Facebook. I'm just kind of easing my way back into Facebook. I'm on Instagram under Kate Ray. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't understand Twitter at all.
I'm with you there.
It's like a jumble sale. I go on, it gives me a headache. I don't understand.
I can't stand it.
No,
we do have a Twitter account, but very rarely do I put on, and I don't read anything on it because I just can't make head or tail out of it.
No, me neither.
I agree with you. Facebook does my head in, but unfortunately we need it. You know, if there's something else that we could use, we would use something else. But
yeah, it's not good.
Go on, Jane.
I have watched quite a few of Kate's YouTube things, and they are really, really good. So if anybody wants to follow understand a lot more about the Fae, then I'd recommend them to go over and watch Kate's YouTube, because a lot of them are just so good, and it's just really interesting to listen to other people.
Yeah, it is a fascinating subject, I must admit, and I do feel an experience coming on sometime.
Oh yeah. We'll get you in a tutu and some wings by the end of this. We'll get you dressed up.
Oh, Bloss is going to make a comment about that. I know she is. Okay, Nelly says, people also need to respect nature more. One way is to take a bag if you are walking in the woods to pick up any rubbish as you walk. That is a very good comment, Nelly.
Yeah, it's definitely. I started doing that and couldn't believe how much rubbish within, 2 massive bin liners in a wood that was particularly clean wood, really, and going through and getting everything sorted that way. But the Fae will definitely sort of pick up their ears to that one and give you the thumbs up. And it's a great way to interact with them. It is respecting nature, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And then she says, think about it. Would we as people be happy if someone came into our home and just dropped rubbish everywhere? No, we wouldn't. And it's a very good point.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other side of that is that we're kind of disconnected, that we don't see the woods as our home. That we don't see nature, places of natural, just outside we don't see as our home. We see people dropping litter in the street and it's like, that is our home.
Yeah. Another comment from Mark. She is a nutcase, but we love her.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Who you on about, Mark? Kate or Jane? I think they're both nutty, but it's good to be a little bit nutty, though, isn't it? Let's face it.
Oh God, yeah. You just gotta follow what's in your heart and what's in your mind, and you just gotta do it, because sometimes you're just compelled to do it, more or less. I mean, that's how I am. I'm just steered in such a way that I've just got to do it.
Yeah. And Mark says, both of you.
Yeah, cheers.
He's going to get his butt kicked, honestly. He knows it. He knows he's pushing it.
And he doesn't know, Jane. He's met you just on here, probably. And see... And Bloss says, no, going to tell Julie you were ashamed to come clean about the cricket. Our Bloss. And that's all the comments. So, any last words, Jane?
No, I'm just really grateful that Kate's come on the show, and it's been lovely to chat with her again. Lovely to have a catch up, and it's fantastic that I can chat with these things to like-minded people.
Yeah, definitely.
It's good to chat to nutty people, isn't it? Go on, Kate. You was going to say something.
I think I'd like to put the offer out to people who are out there, if they have had experiences that they don't feel like that they can talk about. I'm more than happy just to be a listening ear if people need that, because I know that it can be quite difficult to open up and not look like a nut job and not have people like Mark Williams tell you are.
AJ says, how interesting this has been, thank you. And Bloss said it's been fantastic as well.
Oh,
and
brilliant.
When we are out of lockdown, I think we mentioned this before, didn't we, Kate? Katie's going to come to the centre and do a talk for us.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That will be sorted when we know we can reopen. Because it's no good planning anything at the minute, because I don't want to book you in just to have it cancelled, because that does me head in.
Yeah.
And if you see my diary, it's a mess anyway.
Yeah. I think everybody's scribbled out, rearranged, scribbled out.
It's not colour coordinated like Jane's is. Mine, I book Teams in, and come to read it the next day, and I can't read my writing. I'm not joking. But but these, I think we really enjoy these shows, and these shows like this, not just us, it's all the others that are doing shows like, and yourself. I think it's helping people get through these lockdowns and through this crazy world that we're in at the minute.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's definitely helping me. It's keeping me in the zone as well, because I really miss going out and investigating with people. I miss my team, and I miss meeting people, doing events, etc. It's a big part of all our lives, and it's not just the paranormal aspect, it's the sense of community, and it's the people that you see on a regular basis, and it's these kind of things definitely help me. So
definitely. And I worked out this evening that the centre's actually been closed 9 months out of the last 12, Jane.
Yeah, that's a long time, isn't it?
It's crazy. But we'll soon be open.
Definitely.
So we just want to say thanks very much for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been fascinating as always. And I do feel there's an experiment coming along soon.
You've got to get
And-
dressed. You've got to get dressed up for that. That's the fairies have told me that.
Yeah.
Tutu.
Oh, I'm excited. No, I haven't. No, I am interested.
Look, I've got two women ganging up on me now. So on
Yeah.
that note, we're going.
Thank you so much, guys.
You're putting the image of me in a pink tutu to everybody's mind now. It's not a good sight, I'm telling you.
Perhaps you can get some dowsing rods to match.
Pink dowsing rods.
Even the
Okay.
dogs agree.
No, the dog's saying don't be silly, girls. Dog's on my side. I don't care whose dog it is. Say you say no. All right. Thanks, Kate. We're going to put the video on to end the show, and we'll see you soon. See you all soon, guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye.